Is it time to reveal your real magic and become seen, known, and valued? Hi, and welcome to this week's Visionary Voices Deep Dive Live. And today we are talking about becoming a transformational maestro. So welcome, and if we haven't met before, hello, I am Rionach Aiken, deep dive visibility mentor and coach for visionary leaders, and welcome if we haven't met before. And it's my mission to really help soulful business owners, creatives, to show up and share your wisdom in deeper ways and more magnetic ways than you ever have before. If you're here with me, watching me live, just say hello. Or if you're watching replay, put in replay and I'll respond to all your comments. Hi, Rosalie. Lovely to have you here with us today. So I created this topic because, I have conversations regularly with people about this subject. I thought actually it'd be really great to speak about this here in our group. Because what I see over and over in the deeply committed transformation experts that are in my community, that are my clients, and that are the people I get to hang out with is, I see this issue of undervaluing actually the mastery that we have and that we are engaged with as transformational experts in training, where we are in that process. So what I want to share with you today is, helping you to recognize the practice that you are already engaged in, where you are already well on the path to being a transformational maestro or fully committed to that path. So recognize that and value that path. Discover where you, if you're like me and many of the people I know, where you might be judging yourself harshly for the very thing that actually gives you this, tremendous transformational power. And I give you lots of stories and examples about how this works and why it's so valuable. And also notice, in terms of visibility, notice where you may be or have been or sometimes still do hold yourself back instead of stepping forward to give your gifts, because I'll explain why. So tell me in the comments, what did you resonate with around this topic, and what are some of the things I've just been talking about? What's your experience? I'd love to hear from you around this, because there are some experts that talk about this, 10,000 hour rule. And it's kind of, the idea is it's putting in the practice and putting in the hours. If you're a classical musician, so it's putting in the practice at the piano or on the violin, that gives you the expertise and enables you to become that master of your craft. And there's been some studies done that show over time, the more practice you put in, that's what separates the real experts from those that are maybe talented but don't reach the same height. So that's where that comes from. And, and we often only see the end results. We see the beautiful performance on the stage. We see the gymnast flying through the air. We see the artist making their masterpiece. We don't see these 10,000 hours or however many hours of the hard work, the daily practice that go into creating that mastery. And what I see in transformational industry is that most people, including the experts, not only fail to recognize our personal practices, but we judge ourselves for having it. It's kind of twisted around. So I'd love to hear from you. What is your experience here? Because what I see one of the things I see that can happen when I speak to people and they're saying, oh, but I'm still doing my work. This is endlessly getting ready to be ready. And it's like, oh, I'm not ready to start my practice or to go full out with my business because I'm so busy doing my own personal work. And that somehow is actually going to go away when you step up to be a transformational leader. So, there's a lot of that. People kind of going, I'm holding back. I don't want to be visible when I'm so imperfect and all over the place. So mastering this process of personal transformation is really key. And it's also what enables you as a transformational leader and expert to walk your talk. And this is the practice that most, transformational leaders and experts or those in training engage in. So, tell me how it is for you. Do you find yourself judging yourself harshly for having stuff and feeling ashamed that you still have, stuff coming up, heartbreak or anger or fear, and that you should have all of these issues done. They should be gone. There's somehow a place you will reach where that's not going to happen anymore because you're not there. You judge yourself for that. Hi, Joe. Welcome. So this is something that's so deep, and I see it in myself and so many of us as visionary leaders. So, what I want to ask you in terms of recognizing the practice that you are already in. So sometimes feel like a fraud. Thank you so much for sharing that, Joe, because what I've just been talking about is that, if we were a classical musician and we were putting, we've been putting in the 4 hours of practice a day on our instrument that many musicians have, that enable us to show up and give the beautiful concert, to hold a profound space for personal development. We would be honoring ourselves for that practice. And what happens in our industry, in the transformation industry, we actually judge ourselves for doing our own personal process and transformation work, for needing that time to hold space for ourselves, for sometimes, not being able to get everything done because we need to do deep inner work. And it's really twisted. And we often hold ourselves back from stepping forward because of that. So, so a couple of, questions for you. How many years have you been engaged in deep personal work, to clear your blocks and patterns and activate your, intuitive powers, whether, so for me, I know I began doing my personal work when I had a burnout stroke breakdown at the age of 23, so I had to go to some relaxation, stress classes, meditation, which turned into energy work and Reiki, and trip to India, deep emotional work. And by the age of 27, I was fully committed to doing the deep work of transformation and living that life. So that's, for me, that's between 25 and 30 years of doing this. How long has it been for you? Hi, Iris. Lovely to have you here with us as well. And then the next question is, how many trainings have you done? How many workshops, retreats, professional trainings that support this as well? How much money, time, and energy have you invested, in this? It goes beyond personal, it's also professional transformation. So for me, I know I've easily invested, over 100,000, way more at this stage. And in this nearly 30 years of doing this deep work. But what happens is, and this has been true for me as well, I didn't talk about it, for years. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of being thought weird. I was afraid of people kind of going, are you okay? Is there, gosh, you've got all this emotional stuff. It's like, well, we all have it. I'm just doing the work on it. I was also afraid that others wouldn't understand, or actually others will be scared of by how deep I go and have gone. That it's like, oh, this is going to be too deep for a lot of people. I know for people in my family, it was like, oh, for many of them, it was like they just didn't get it. It was too deep, so I didn't talk about it. So what has this been for you? Iris is saying it, similar journey, burnout, trip to India, new awareness, opening up, and I do sometimes feel this should be realized by now. Yeah, you're not alone with that, Iris. And she's saying yes, the practice is so important to get to doing the practice. There needs to be the passion and the absolute love of the art so that you put that above all else. And sometimes we see the process transformation as being, a sudden now I've got their moment of bliss and perfection, when really it's a process that takes time and constant rehearsing new behaviors and ways of thinking, believing. I find I'm sharing the processing I'm currently going through. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And this is why I've created this training today, is to start to disrupt that tendency to hide our mastery. So beautiful. So this is the next point I want to cover is discover where we judge ourselves harshly for the very thing that gives us tremendous transformational power. And I think that's where we don't join the dots consistently and recognize that this personal practice, this, putting in the work to become the master, is the thing that gives us the magic. And I remember, I was on a call with somebody who was, considering working with me, and they asked me this beautiful question, and it really came from, it sounds like a harsh question, but it came from such a deep, authentic place. They asked me, why should I work with you? What is it that you bring? That's different to what other people bring. And it was a beautiful question. And my answer really came from the heart, and what came through me in that moment, because I didn't quite know what I was going to say, was like, because I have walked this path, this path of going from being terrified of being visible to getting comfortable with it and being able to share my deepest part. I said, because I've walked this path, I know the territory. I know the shortcuts. I can, guide you down the right paths. I know what works and what doesn't. And, and I know, because I know this path, I can hold a deep transformational space for you. I'm not afraid, of the shadows, the darkness. I'm not afraid of the fears. I won't judge you for your resistance, your procrastination, your struggles. I can create safety for these shadows to come into the light, and and for you to reclaim who you truly are, because I've done my own deep work on this. And it just felt so true, and was so well received. So what's your version of that? Where have you been judging yourself, or hiding for doing the very thing that gives you such wisdom and power? And if someone was to ask you, why should I work with you? And you were to think about all of the deep work that you have done to become the master of your, what's your response to that? Because let's own that and make it visible. And so, Joe was saying, yes, I haven't talked about my journey because people around me assumed there was something wrong with me. I was perceived as weak, as odd, and as wacky. I hear you. I hear you, Joe. I've been there as well. It's like people kind of saying, are you okay? Is there something wrong with you? But our people, one of the when I did start and I learned how to share my personal stories of transformations, which felt very, very vulnerable, when I started doing it. But I got such a tremendous response from my people, and so many people, in my community and wider network, just commenting, responding, saying me too, and actually experiencing transformation just from reading the stories of my transformation. And also, some people were saying, there was a couple of people who saying, this is why I need to work with you, because they read my stories and they knew that I got it. So there is a way to share this that will speak to your people. And yes, it does involve becoming visible and vulnerable. So, and so notice, where have you been holding yourself back instead of stepping forward to give your gifts? Because I see this so often in amazing people who do incredible work, but they're still kind of hiding and holding back, either because they're judging themselves or not being ready, or they don't want to put themselves out there and be judged by people who are not in the transformational world and don't get it. And that's okay. They don't have to, they don't have to. But the other, so I was saying, a client once told me that asked me that same question. And I said, because you get me and everything I have learned to bring you through the process. Also, I see who you are and who you can be. Beautiful, Iris. So you're also, and how is it that you can see who she is and who she can be? That client, who they are. It's you also can see that because you have done the deep work to see yourself. So absolutely beautiful to recognize and honor your gifts, and also honor the years of practice that have gone in often to forging those gifts. Some of them are natural talents, but a lot of them, to be able to articulate and communicate them, comes from doing deep work. And so the last point that I want to talk about here is how, when, engaging in this personal practice makes your transformational work so much more potent. This is what makes you, not just transformational expert, but a transformational maestro who holds the deep transformation space to own this. Because what I've noticed is that when I am fully engaged in a personal process of transformation and really needing to give myself time to hold space for myself, and a lot of this summer, I had a lot of that because there was so much going on in my family. 3 of my family members going on cancer journeys. The day before I was giving my new group program, I heard about, my dad's cancer diagnosis the day before, and it's like, oh, can I show up and hold space for others when I'm in this process of holding space for myself? Which is a good question. And what I discovered is that when I'm holding a deep space for myself and holding space for all of that tenderness and fear and sorrow, and that my work becomes even more potent. And I'd love for you to, see where this is true for you as well. And for you, that might be holding a space of silence. It might be being with your emotions. It might be being in a deep creative process, whatever that is for you. But notice that when you give that to yourself, your work becomes even more potent. And what I noticed is that when I would show up, for my clients, for my groups, even if I've been in tears or holding my own terror, my tenderness, my pain, like even if there's 30 minutes before I had to show up, incredible shifts would happen for my clients. Blocks that had been held in place for decades were melting within minutes. The one client who showed up, and just before the session, I was in such a deep place of holding, really, really tender part of me that felt so raw and so tender. And I was just holding space for it and sitting quiet, and then say, okay, get ready for my session. And the session went so deep. And, she shared with me afterwards that, a few weeks later, she said that block has been permanently transformed. She said, and I've had it for years. It was a huge, huge thing for me. It was something that came from her school days. And she also shared with me afterwards that she was going to a school reunion about just a few days after we did this session, and she was kind of dreading it because a lot of this trauma came from an incident that happened there. And she said it was just gone. I was able to go. I was able to enjoy myself, and that block is completely transformed. I can just be who I am in my life and with these people. And a question that comes up for me is, was I holding space for me, or was I holding space without even knowing it for that part of her, so that transformation could happen? Is this stuff mine? Is it somebody else's? Is it in the collective? I don't know. I know we're all connected. I know synchronicities happen. It doesn't really matter, because we are all ultimately, we're all one, we're all connected. And I also noticed, in my groups, that I was able to show up, and that same thing, holding such a deep and such a safe space for transformation, because I was holding space for these tender parts of me as well, because I'm listening deeply to myself. I'm showing up listening deeply to the most tender parts of them. They feel safe, their resistance melts, they transform. I don't need to show off my expertise and my teaching. I can just totally be receptive to the energy and allowing space for magic to happen. So, I know, where is this true for you as well? Where have you noticed this? That you kind of think, oh, maybe I should cancel because I'm in such a state, but you show up anyway and magic happens. It's not a coincidence. I'd love to hear your stories about that as well, because what happens when we do this. This is the practice of mastery. When I'm in my own personal transformation and willingly engaged in that and giving myself time and space for that as much as possible, I am holding and creating a potent, alive field for transformation. So, it actually activates the transformational field much more powerfully when this happens. So, if you go into a deep process just before offering, your challenge, your video, your one-on-one session, your retreat, your group, don't beat yourself up for that. Celebrate that, because you are activating, and the universe has orchestrated this to activate a potent transformational field that you're bringing. So you don't need to cancel. You don't need to play small. You don't need to hold back. You don't need to go, really trust that and go with that as well. And you can also use this if you have patterns, if you have clients or groups or people in your life who are resistant to change, and if they have a certain pattern that they're showing up with, you transform that within yourself and notice what happens, because we are all connected. This is a great way to transform resistance in people around you as well. We go really deep. And the last part of this I want to share is, how this activates a transformational field when we show up both in our brilliance and our powerful, loving self, our ability to hold space for ourselves, because that's key. It's only when we're holding space for our own transformation, then we can hold space for others. And if you're having trouble with that, then get support from somebody else who can hold space for you, because that's also okay. But this being able to hold space for your own vulnerability. And when you come into a session and you're kind of remembering your own tenderness, your own failings to be perfect, you're remembering, you're in touch with the depths of your pain, the stubbornness of your own patterns, your own resistance. It actually activates your superpower of empathy and this compassion energy. You can touch those parts of someone else and they can feel the safety that you're holding. They can feel your presence, your love, your care, your willingness to not be afraid and not judge those deep parts. And that actually, it creates safety, and they feel safe, they feel held, they feel understood, and they can reconnect with those depths, and things just melt. It's utterly magical. So, how can you own your mastery as a transformation leader and share that so people understand the value of what you're bringing? Because one of the things that I want to say about this, it's such a powerful, potent gift, and it's time. It's time to celebrate it and not judge it. It's time to embrace it and not resist it. It's time to share it and not hide it. It's time to value it and not think less of ourselves for it. And it's time to charge more for it, because, we have put the hours in, and not less because we don't think we're ready. So this is a call to action for our entire industry to shift how we perceive this as well, because it's so important. So I'd love to hear your takeaways, your key insights from this as well. So this is what we're doing today. We've been recognizing the practice, the personal transformation practice that we're already engaged in, that builds our mastery, and recognize it as a practice that creates the masterful expertise that we have as transformation leaders. And also, we've been noticing where we might be judging ourselves harshly for the very thing that gives us a transformational power. I wish that would go away so I could be a better transformational leader. You wouldn't be a better transformational leader if that goes away. If you stop doing that work, you're not going to be a better transformational leader. You won't. You might be more of an expert, or you might be pretending to know it all, but you won't be creating that potent field of transformation. And then the last part is noticing where we might be holding back rather than stepping forward, trusting the process. So I'd love to hear, what are your key takeaways or key insights from this? And if you would love to be held in some deep transformational magic with me, reach out. We can set up a chat, because sometimes we do need someone to hold space for us in this, so that we can show up and share our gifts. So reach out for a chat if you need support with this. And thank you so much for all your shares today. And let me know how you get on with showing up as the transformational leader that you are, and being that transformational maestro that you already are. Bye for now. Thank you.